Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee from the Skill Builder channel, and in this video I'd like to talk to you about economics. Don't switch off. I know this is a building channel, but hopefully what I'm about to say will have some relevance to you if you're running a building business or you're spending money. The root of all evil, so they say. When I studied economics, it was a lot simpler in those days. You kind of knew what money was. Before money, we used to have bartering. You would carry your pig under your arm, walk around the village, find somebody who wanted to swap one pig for 10 chickens, that kind of thing. And obviously having some money means that we no longer have to do that. And of course, now we haven't even got money, we got credit cards, we got electronic transactions, which is where it all starts to lose me, because I start to wonder what money is, who owns it, where does it come from, and where does it go? Now, a perfect market is a concept where every buyer is in touch with every seller. They all know the quality and the nature of the goods. We have goods here. To some extent, we know the quality of the goods and we can establish a price, which brings us back to money. You get distortions in a perfect market. You get what they call friction, which is something that makes it difficult for the buyer and the seller to make a transaction. And there can be various reasons for this. And if you're not aware of all the sellers, you may go and buy something for more money than it costs. But obviously with the wonders of the internet, we're now moving closer and closer to the perfect market, where all buyers can see all sellers and work out the price and what represents good value. Now, the goods have to be homogeneous. In other words, we have to know that those goods are of a similar quality. And here again, we have a little issue. Not all goods are of similar quality. Now, this is where it becomes relevant to the building industry, because a builder can be of a very high quality or a very low quality, but the buyer has no way of knowing what the quality of that builder is until they try that builder, or they get some recommendation, or that builder starts to establish a reputation for quality. And it could be that the buyer hires the builder and finds out that the builder isn't such a good builder, so he wasn't really worth the money, but he's paid it anyway, and therein lies the rub. This is one of the major problems of the building industry, that when you're going out to hire a builder, you don't know whether you've got a good one or a bad one. So there is no perfect market in the building industry. It is, to return to a previous analogy, a pig in a poke. Let's assume that this is the good guy. This builder has got arms, legs and a brain, and that he's willing to use it to provide a good service, which is worth the money. So he is a quality builder. That builder has to buy materials. So that builder needs a perfect market in which to buy his materials. He needs to be able to look at what's on offer, and he needs to be able to make a judgment as to whether that is good value or not. And of course, once again, we know that not all materials are the same. That builder has got to use his brain, his noggin here, to work out which materials are worth buying, whether it's worth paying a little bit of extra money for better quality materials. And then he's back to this problem, because he's still working for this customer here. So he's got to go to the customer and he's going to go, what I would like to install in your house is a better quality material. Are you willing to pay for it? And the buyer goes, I'm not sure. And therein we have further friction in our imperfect market. So the other problem we're finding now is that the prices are going up and up and up all the time. So by the time the builder has gone back to the customer and the customer has decided that he or she wants to spend the money, the price may have gone up. And we're finding this with inflation all the time. Every time you go to the merchants, the price has gone up. The other thing you're getting is shrinkflation, where the price hasn't gone up, but the quantity in the materials has gone down. And they try and disguise it in clever ways, and they try and make the package look similar, but you find that you're actually getting less product for your money inside that package. Who could be so devious? Here's another thing that you find with manufacturers of goods. So the manufacturers are obviously trying to make as much money as they possibly can, and so sometimes the manufacturers, who are supposed to be in this perfect market where they're all competing with each other, are actually fixing the price. And a recent case of this was with British Lead, where they were actually colluding between themselves and they were keeping the price higher than it otherwise may have been if they were competing with each other. Now this is called a cartel, and you get cartels in very many things. It's actually illegal under the competition laws, but we all know it happens. Sometimes these manufacturers get a little bit too cozy. Sometimes they come up with a fairly formal agreement, if you like. Sometimes it's a couple of manufacturers have met at a trade show or something. They're sitting in a bar one evening and they're going, hey guys, we don't want to go to war with each other. Why don't we just all agree that we won't lower our prices beyond a certain point? And that way we will all be happy instead of being busy fools. We found cartels in things like cement and all kinds of other things. Now, I just mentioned this, that when I started out in the building industry, you had a 50-kilo bag of cement. That was when men were men, and you shoved one of those on your shoulder, and if you were tough, you put another one under your arm, and you carried those bags of cement in. I saw many, many labourers doing that. Somebody, somewhere, decided that, oh, that was much too heavy for people. We're going to halve the weight of a bag of cement and all the other bags as well. So 25 kilos became the magic figure beyond which you should not lift on your own. So 25 kilos deemed as the maximum one-man lift, and that's what the bags of cement were. Halved in size overnight. Did they halve the price? Did they? Hell. They lowered the price a little bit, but not a lot. And they made the excuse, well, we still got to package it, we've still got to distribute it, we've still got to handle it, we've got all those other things. And they made their excuses for not halving the cost, even though they were only giving you half the amount of material. Now, another thing that's happened in cement over the years is that they've started to put a lot more fly ash into the cement. They get waste products from things like coal-fired power stations, and they put that into the cement. That is a wonderful thing because it's environmentally friendly. It cuts down the carbon in as much as this is something that's already been produced. You think, okay, they're using a waste product there. Why aren't they charging us less money? Because they're now putting a percentage of waste into our cement, whereas it used to be pure Portland cement. Did they lower the price? No. Did they raise the price? Possibly. So while I'm talking about conferences, I was at the Builders Merchants Federation annual conference many, many years ago, and somebody quite high up in the organisation said to me, well, of course, he said, we all know it's a bit of a con. In as much as the builder will phone the merchant up and say, how much are you charging for your bricks? And the merchant will give him a price, and then the builder will say, well, no, I can get that down the road a bit cheaper. And then the builder's merchant will say, well, I'll match that price. And so the builder says, okay, I'll buy from you. So the builder buys from them. And then, of course, by the time the account comes through at the end of a month, they've forgotten to match that price. In other words, they were charging you what they were going to charge you anyway. And they let these things slip through all the time. And if the builder's not on the case and he can't go back and say, you said to me you were going to charge me such and such for that, unless you get it in writing, unless you get that quote, if it's just a telephone conversation, a lot of the time you find that they don't actually charge you the price that they say they're going to charge you. That's not all builders merchants, obviously, but some of them, and this guy from the Builders Merchants Federation said that's common practice. So there's one to watch out for. Now, some people may be surprised to know that all this kind of haggling goes on in the building industry, because it doesn't seem to happen in a lot of other places. I mean, you don't go into Sainsbury's or Tesco's and say to them, this custard is too expensive, I want to buy it for 5p less, and the person on the till goes, all right then, how many are you going to buy? If you're going to buy 5 packs, I'll give it to you a bit cheaper. That doesn't happen. But in builders merchants, that happens all the time. It's part of the culture, it's part of the scene. Now, even in the builders merchant I go to, which is more like a supermarket in as much as it has checkouts, and I go there quite regularly, and I pick something off the shelf and it's got a certain price on it, and I go to the till, and if the right person is on the till, one of my sort of friendly guys that I get on with, they go, I'll give you a little bit of discount off this, and they give me a discount. Not even ask for sometimes, they just do it out of the kindness of their heart. There's that situation where you can always get a little bit more. The British aren't particularly good at haggling. A lot of other nationalities will haggle just as a matter of course. You know, they will never want to pay the right price for something, which is where you come back to this problem with buyers and builders. They want quality, but they're not willing to pay for it. The builder gives them a price, the buyer decides that they can do a little bit of haggling. So if the builder wants the job, he says to them, all right, I'll agree to do it for that slightly reduced price, but somewhere along the line, he tries to make that money up. He charges for a few extras, he puts a little bit on here, a little bit on there, or sometimes he does a job of a lesser quality. When you buy cheap, you buy twice. Very often when you're hiring a builder, that tends to be the case. But how do you know if you'll pay top dollar that you're going to get the top builder? You just don't. It could be that the guy's charging loads of money and doing a rubbish job. And a further distortion that we've got in this, VAT. If the builder's VAT registered, it means he's going to be charging an extra 20% on top of his labour, and another builder who is not VAT registered is not charging that 20% on his labour. So he immediately becomes a slightly more attractive proposition to the buyer. And then this builder goes, hang on a minute, this is unfair, I'm losing the job to him. The builder goes back to the client and he says, if you give me cash, I'll knock off the VAT. And this is where the government is largely shooting itself in the foot by having this two-tier system, which is supposed to nurture and develop the smaller trader and allow the smaller trader a slight advantage and make them grow into a big trader where eventually they will start paying VAT. Fat chance of that, I say. This thing, cash, is fast disappearing. It seems to be that the only people who are dealing in cash nowadays, drug dealers and builders. Not that I will put them in the same category. So we've got inflation, we've got prices going up at a rapid rate, we've got people who are going to be struggling to pay their fuel bills, we've got people who are going to be struggling to pay their mortgages because they maxed out on the mortgage when it was only a couple of percent or whatever, and now the interest rates are going to be going up because the only way that you can cure inflation is to raise interest rates, and the interest rates will undoubtedly rise despite what the Bank of England says is going to happen. So you're going to find that people are unable to pay their mortgages, and of course this whole thing ends up in a recession. The one good thing about inflation is that if you've got debt, if you owe money, then you get inflation and the money that you owe becomes greatly reduced. So to my mind, the government, which now has a huge amount of debt due to the COVID crisis and other things, is borrowed money up to the hilt, money which future generations will have to pay back. Our kids and their kids, if you like, will be paying for our profligacy. Therefore, I think that we will find that the inflation will come in, and to some extent, even though the governments are saying they don't want inflation, I bet they do, because that's a way of wiping out your debt overnight. You need to get yourself a wheelbarrow for the money, but of course that has now become a thing of the past because it's all down to electronic transactions, and of course that brings us to cryptocurrency. What is cryptocurrency? Nobody knows. I've got to tell you that I no longer understand what money is. Money has no intrinsic value, you know, it's a promise basically. It's just an act of faith, it's an act of trust. Even gold has no real value. Okay, you can use it, gold plated, this, that and the other, but actually we're using it as a means of transaction. We used to ship gold back and forth across the Atlantic in the gold standard, and it was a way of storing wealth. And it still is a way of storing wealth, but it has no real value. It's just a trust. It's just that people have agreed that it's worth that kind of money. So when people look at a painting, say a Van Gogh painting, and they say, how can that painting be worth 20, 30 million pounds or whatever it's worth? And of course, the reason is that it's one painting. Everybody knows what it is. It's been authenticated. We know what the provenance of it is. And it's not going to go down in price because everybody's agreed that that is the value. You can put your money into fine wines. You can put your money money into works of art, you can put your money into cryptocurrency, but one thing you can't do with your money is leave it in the bank, because this inflation means that the value of any money that you got is going to go down and down and down, which is a problem for people like me who are close to retirement and have built up a little nest egg over the years. And by the time I get to draw my pension, and possibly by the time you get to draw your pension, it's going to be worth the square root of stuff all. Do you put your money into property? Well, that's been a good bet for many, many years. People say you can't lose with property. You put your money into bricks and mortar, but of course everything can go down. Anything that goes up can come down. It could be that we have a property price crash similar to the one that happened in the United States when they had the subprime mortgages, and the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. And on the subject of the subprime mortgage fiasco, if you like, it does amuse me when I get comments on the bottom of the thing that I did on the spray foam saying, in America we've got no problem getting mortgages on properties with spray foam. Well, that's fine. Of course, we know that the Americans would lend money on anything to anybody, and that is how Lehman Brothers and all the other banks suffered so greatly in that property price crash in America. So that's my little trip around economics, for what it's worth, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but by all means put your comments below, because I'd be interested to know what your thoughts on it are. And we know we're in uncertain times, and we know there may be trouble ahead, so fingers crossed. If you've got the answer, let us know. I'm Roger Bisbee. Come back and see us soon on Skill Builder. We're still going, just about.